After serving in the American Civil War, Union soldier turned expert gunslinger John Henry Clayton returns to his hometown of Fowler, Wyoming, to reunite with his family after 10 years a drifter. However, Fowler is not as John left it. It is now being run by a rich and not surprisingly corrupt land grabber, James McCurdy, along with his hired gun, former Confederate soldier Dave Turner, also known as Gentleman Dave, who used brutal and lethal force against the poor residents in order to drive them from their land. The only resistance to this violent takeover is John's father, the town's Reverend Samuel Clayton, along with a few residents brave enough to stand against McCurdy. John gets home and finally reunites with Samuel, who hits him right away with terrible news.
Your mother is dead.
His mother has passed away. The news hits him hard as his mother was everything to him. If he had any idea she was ill, he would have returned home.
I did not know that she had passed.
But Samuel subtly blames him for her passing. He held her in his arms as she cried out for John before she passed away, and it's that which partly fuels the resentment he feels towards his son.
You don't wear guns.
He, however, notices that John is without his guns, and learns that his son has put his gunslinging days behind him. But this doesn't change anything. A man doesn't simply change like that. John goes to pay his respects at his mother's grave, bringing her flowers, regretting that he couldn't hand them to her when she was alive. Later, Samuel decides to head into town, so John decides to join him. The town is busier than usual as a new railroad is being built nearby, and among the old faces, while others are strange to him. While Samuel goes to get some items from a convenience store owned by Mr. Parsons, John goes to pick up a package from the saloon. This is where he encounters the thug Frank Tillman, who works for McCurdy. Frank approaches John, who instinctively reaches for his pistol, but remembers he's no longer carrying. Frank has heard a lot about the notorious John Clayton, sizing himself up as a badass himself, having killed 4 men.
I killed 4 men. How come you ain't wearing a gun?
But John has no idea who he is. At that moment, Gentleman Dave puts a stop to Tillman's taunting, apologizing for their uncivilized behavior.
I heard of you.
He introduces himself, but John knows of his exploits. There was a while back when Dave witnessed John cut down a notorious gunslinger, calling it an impressive showdown. John mostly stays quiet, so Dave gets to the point. He wants to know that they won't be getting any problems from him.
Not from me.
But John has no intention of getting involved. After he leaves, McCurdy wants to know Dave's assessment of him. Dave saw that he was unarmed and doesn't think he would be a threat, but McCurdy is rightly worried. If John takes his father's side in their conflict, they will have a serious issue. John and Samuel are packing to head home when Samuel explains to him the situation going on in town, warning him to stay away from the gang. After a long day clearing the land, John returns home. Samuel mentions church in the morning, but John has no intention of attending. Samuel then gets really honest with his son. John is an embarrassment to him. His gunslinging, murderous ways have left a stain on the family. If he really wants to change his ways, then Samuel can forgive him, but he just can't forgive the past 10 years where he abandoned his mother. The following day, John is back on the land clearing dead trees when Samuel stops by on his way to church, wondering what he's up to. John is clearing the land like his mother always wanted him and Samuel to do, but Samuel can't recall hearing such a request from his wife, still refusing to connect with John over anything. After church, Samuel meets with his small band of resistance, including Parsons.
We think we should bring in our own hired guns.
They want to bring in hired guns to help deal with McCurdy, who's gotten bolder since the sheriff abandoned the town. After forcing out a family last week, his next target is one of their own, Daniel Peterson, but he promises to give them hell if they step foot onto his land.
They'll be looking to the wrong end of my 10-gauge.
Samuel wants to find another way out than causing bloodshed.
Guns are not the answer.
He is hopeful that the law will be on their side after sending a telegram to the U.S. Marshals, but in their opinion, they're too poor for the law to care. Later, John gets an unexpected visitor, his old flame before the war, Mary Alice, who wonders why she had to hear from people in town that he's back. Just seeing him again, she is lost for words, which is ironic since she waited for this day for many years. John, not a man of many words, is simply struck by her beauty which didn't fade after all these years.
I swear you look the same as the day I left.
After the awkward reunion, John suggests that they could see each other later, but here he is hit with reality.
I'm married.
Mary Alice is married, been married to Tom Watson for the last 8 years with a son, Charlie. She waited, but after hearing nothing from John for a few years, she had to move on. John has no choice but to accept this, but at least Tom Watson is a good man. Mary Alice leaves. John ends up breaking his axe handle, so he heads into town to purchase a new one. It is there John witnesses a confrontation between Tillman and Daniel.
We was just coming to pay you a visit.
Tillman confronts him in the middle of the street. Then, without even a warning, Tillman punches him, then busts his nose with his pistol. He then starts punching on Peterson, but John has seen enough and steps between them. He doesn't want to fight,
May I take him home?
asking permission to take Peterson home, so Tillman allows them to leave. Later over dinner, Samuel again initiates a fight. He always wondered what they did so wrong for John to turn out like he did and be filled with so much hate. John refuses to answer, but when Samuel tells him God already knows the truth, he loses it. To him, God was nowhere to be found, while his brothers were dying around him during the war. He soon came to the conclusion that there was no God, but this enrages Samuel. After the war, John could have come home. He instead chose a life of violence, but John reveals he did not have a choice. The following day, trouble finds Peterson once more. Tillman and the gang led by Gentleman Dave come riding onto his property, so he steps out to greet them with a shotgun.
Get off my land.
Gentleman Dave steps forward to talk with him, trying to get him to see reason. There's no way he can win, so it's pointless to throw away his life and leave his wife a widow for just dirt and rock.
What is my dirt? And my rock?
Peterson starts to understand what he's up against, and even begins lowering the gun, but Tillman runs out of patience and signals to one of the guys to kill Peterson. Gentleman Dave is pissed as Peterson was about to see reason and swiftly eliminates the shooter, reminding them he's way more lethal than he looks. A few days later, Peterson is laid to rest. Samuel's group desperately needs a solution when they see John nearby. They want to hire him, having raised $200 as payment, but Samuel tells them he's done with that life. Samuel can't believe what has happened, but John thinks it'll only get worse after the first death. In town, McCurdy is quite delighted after purchasing the Peterson farm. Gentleman Dave, however, didn't like how it went down, calling Tillman's bunch a pack of murderers, but McCurdy didn't hire him to sweet-talk the locals and prefers Tillman's aggressive approach. He wants Tillman to handle the farms, but still wants Dave around as he suspects John will soon be picking up his guns. Later, one thug barges into the saloon excitedly announcing they're heading to the Chadwick farm, but Tillman grabs him aggressively for announcing their moves to everyone in town. The following day, Samuel finds John still working the land. He thinks John is trying to prove something. He's trying to work out his sweat and guilt into the land, but John corrects him. He's doing this because his mother wanted it. Samuel persists. What his mother wanted was for John to return from the war, but John flips the script.
You want me to come back?
He doesn't think Samuel himself wanted him to return, as Samuel always hated him after his brother William died drowning. He couldn't forget the look of disappointment on his own father's face when he realized that it was William who died instead of John. The stern Samuel seems taken aback by this accusation, wondering how John could think such a thing. He did not feel disappointed then, but after seeing John become an outlaw after the war, he couldn't help but wonder if William would have made more with his life. Later, right on schedule, Tillman and his thugs ride onto the Chadwick farm, but ride straight into an ambush.
It's an ambush!
Chadwick and his brothers put up a fierce resistance, and after the dust has settled, only 4 thugs return on 3 horses. They get back to the saloon nursing their injuries, and out of anger Tillman shoots the man that ran his mouth earlier. John goes to visit Mary Alice. After beating around the bush, she gets down to the point. Why didn't John return after the war, and did he even think about her during that time? John tries to avoid the topic, but Mary Alice thinks she is owed an explanation after they were madly in love.
I think I'm entitled to that much.
John comes clean. He really wanted to return to her after the war, as the thought of her was the only thing keeping him alive back then. He swore he was done with killing after the war, but it wasn't done with him. Mary Alice then reminds him of a ribbon she gave to him before he left for the war, wondering if he still has it. But John, not wanting to reopen old wounds, just tells her she made a good choice marrying Tom. All this time, Tom is watching their interaction. McCurdy calls Tillman into his office. He is definitely not pleased that they messed up getting Chadwick off his farm, as his little show of resistance might put ideas in the others' heads, and that is something he cannot have happening. That night Tom wonders if Mary feels regret marrying him. He reveals he saw she and John Henry talking, and he knows how she felt about him, but Mary Alice thinks that was a long time ago, and she regrets nothing. Turns out John still has Mary's ribbon. The next day Tillman sneaks up on the Chadwick farm, and from a distance like a real coward he guns Dawkins down. Not long after, Mrs. Dawkins is forced to sell her land to McCurdy, and with all the spite she can muster, she tells him she will be there to spit on his grave, but McCurdy coldly tells her to get in line. Later Samuel and John are at Parsons when Tillman comes pushing past them in line ordering a drink. John waits patiently, then asks if he's through, but Tillman is itching for a confrontation and spills the drink at John's feet, demanding that he clean it up. John swallows his pride and cleans it up, even cleaning Tillman's boot, while his goons just mock him. All this time though John is giving him the death stare, and even Tillman can see that even though he wants to change, he still has the eyes of a killer. Even with all this, the thugs still refuse to let John leave the store. Then out of nowhere one man blindsides him and knocks him down before throwing him out into the street, drawing a crowd. Samuel begs for someone to help, but everyone just stands around watching as John is brutally beaten, refusing to fight back. He tries to stand, but just gets knocked right back down.
John Henry, stay down.
Mary Alice wants to help and Tom tries stopping her, but she refuses to just stand by and rushes to help Samuel with John. Later Tom goes for a drink inside the pub when McCurdy sees his chance. He comes over, telling Tom that women can be bold nowadays, but he has a proposal that would benefit them both. If Tom sells his land and moves with his wife, then he won't have John Henry to worry about stealing his woman away from him. Tom, clearly consumed with jealousy, agrees to the deal on the spot. The following day Dave stops by John's place. They both talk about their shared background serving in the war, and it turns out they were both at the bloody Battle of Shiloh, although on opposite sides. Just like the war before, Gentleman Dave thinks they will eventually end up facing each other, but John has no intention to fight.
I got no fight with you, Dave.
If he had, then Frank would be long dead. Dave admires his restraint, but he knows that if a dog is kicked long enough it will bite. He however hopes John continues to be a pacifist, as he would hate for them to clash. When he is feeling a bit better, he heads out into the field to work only to find Samuel there digging a tree stump and joins him without exchanging a word. Samuel is holding service the following day when he is shocked to see John walk in, but a smile flashes across his face and tears fill his eyes as he continues preaching, clearly filled with pride. After church Mary tries talking to John, but Tom is having none of it. With everyone looking on he claims they all welcome John back home, because they're all afraid of him, but he cannot just pick up where he left off. John tells him he's wrong, so Tom demands he deny loving Mary Alice. Tom even shoves him, and John almost loses his temper, but just decides to walk away. Samuel tells Tom he's wrong about John, and realizing his mistake, he rushes over to McCurdy trying to back out of the deal, but that ship has sailed. Once McCurdy has shaken a man's hand, he expects that agreement to be honored, and despite Tom's change of heart, he'd better sign the papers or face the consequences.
Or suffer the fucking consequences.
John heads over to the church to pray. He knows he's not worthy of forgiveness, so he won't ask for it, but he just wants his purpose to be clear to him. Samuel comes and finds him there, and it seems like a sign from God himself. John just starts talking. After the war he became a drifter, and one day he ended up in a town called Norton. Two men came looking for a fight, so he gave it to them and beat them really badly. Instead of leaving, he stayed in the town daring the men to come take revenge. Soon enough he was ambushed, and though he killed his attackers, he ended up accidentally shooting an innocent boy, and this broke him. It reminded him of losing his brother, which he has blamed himself for years, but Samuel is the one to tell him it was an accident. John breaks down in tears, the weight finally lifting from his chest, and Samuel hugs his son. The following day, McCurdy rides onto Mary Alice's property along with 2 men, breaking the news to her that Tom has agreed to sell the property. The news takes Mary Alice by surprise, who demands he get off her land, but McCurdy tells her in about 32 hours it will no longer be her land, and if they're still there by then, she better start looking for a black dress. After they leave, Mary Alice races over to John, telling him about what went down, but he urges her to go home and talk with her husband. She doesn't want her husband to die leaving them, but John warns that it's best they take the offer and move away, as he knows how things like these end. Samuel personally goes to talk with McCurdy, asking him as former friends to leave Tom alone, but McCurdy insists they have a deal and refuses to listen to reason. Samuel leaves and is heading back home when suddenly Tillman and his gang jump him in an alley and brutally stab him in the back, leaving him there. McCurdy is pissed, and Dave tells Frank he did the one thing that would get John Henry involved. John gets the news and races into town to see the doctor working to keep Samuel alive. After a few hours, John learns Samuel will recover and goes to sit with his father. When Samuel wakes the next morning, John is still there. Samuel admits he was wrong about them both, as if he could, he would kill them all. He can see it in John's eyes that all hell is about to break loose and urges him to reconsider. But John has used his skills for bad, and he thinks it's finally time he did something right. John races back home and arms himself with his pistol, then heads over to Parsons, where he gets his hands on a Lumat, a pistol/shotgun hybrid which Parsons lets him borrow. Later, John steps out into the street fully cloaked, and everyone who lays eyes on him can tell what time it is. John walks into the gang's saloon, instantly gunning down the man who beat him in the street. He then quickly draws 2 pistols, warning those that don't want to die to leave. A few men choose wisely and decide to get out of there. Then the gun battle begins. John drops 2 men before diving behind the counter for cover, as Tillman and 2 other men unload. One thug tries sneaking up on John, and gets his fingers blown off before a second bullet drops him. Only Tillman and 1 other thug remain. John tosses his jacket to draw gunfire, then guns down Tillman's second. Tillman gets off a shot close to John, causing him to drop one of his pistols. As Tillman approaches the gun, John steps from behind the counter, gun in hand. Tillman is stunned, and John wonders if he's getting scared. Tillman lets off shots, then runs up some stairs, but John seems to disappear. Tillman cautiously comes to check for John, only to get a bullet straight through the head. John steps out of the saloon, but trouble is not yet done with him. Gentleman Dave steps forward to face him. He distances himself from the attack on Samuel and thinks Tillman's bunch got what they deserved. John tells him to walk away, but he can't just leave, as his pride as a hired gun wouldn't allow him to. The gunfight is inevitable, but John is only left with the heavy Lumat and requests to pick up his pistol, and Gentleman Dave allows him to, wanting a fair fight. John goes to pick up a Colt, but then he spots McCurdy scurrying upstairs. McCurdy grabs a pistol, then stands by with his hand shaking like crazy. John enters the room to find it empty, then McCurdy fires at him from the balcony, but misses his shot, and John sends his body crashing onto the street. He returns to Dave, telling him he's no longer bound by his employment, and Dave accepts this and walks away. As the townsfolk gather round McCurdy's body, Samuel gathers his strength to step outside. John is ready to leave, as he knows that men will come to challenge him after hearing what happened today. Samuel begs him not to leave, breaking down in tears, but John promises to see him again real soon. John then rides away, and in the end he became a drifter and a legend, with stories being told about his exploits. Thanks for watching. If you had a good time, go ahead and hit that like button, drop a comment, and of course, subscribe for more recaps just like this. And hey, don't click away just yet. YouTube thinks you'll love one of these 2 videos popping up right here, so check them out next.